Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second event in the series of virtual reading, a showcase for the initiative that is being hosted by DUSS, Disrupted Ukrainian Scholars and Students. This is the collaborative project of Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, Kule Institute for Advanced Studies, Kule Folklore Center, Department of Modern Languages and Cultural Studies, the Wirth Institute for Austrian and Central European Studies. The project was launched at the beginning of the full-scale invasion to help scholars and artists and also writers to continue their very important work that is being right now a part of the really large initiative, because we know that the war touches not only physical infrastructure, but also culture and also identities. So today we will have two really prominent Ukrainian writers that will be introduced by Dr. Natalia Khanenko-Friesen, professor and Husolyak Chair of Ukrainian Culture and Ethnography at the Department of Modern Languages and Cultural Studies, Faculty of Arts, and also Dr. Khanenko-Friesen, the director of the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. So before I give the floor to Dr. Natalia Khanenko-Friesen, I would like to remind those people who are joining us that at the end we will have also the opportunity for Q&A session, and all questions will be collected via the feature Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So please post your questions, and then we will read them to our guests. Dr. Natalia Khanenko-Friesen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. I'm very, very pleased to welcome into our Zoom room today, DUSS Literary Readings, two prominent Ukrainian writers, Andriy, Lyubka, Kateryna, Yehorushkina. And before the event, I actually went upstairs to check my bookshelves, and sure enough, I have your books on my shelves. With children books, Kateryna, it's a little bit more tricky. They got passed on to other children, but Andriy, there's also a book which I haven't yet finished, so I'm happy to see you in the room with us. I'm also very pleased to represent Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies here, as well as Kule Folklore Studies, of which I'm a member, and be part of this conversation for a reason that I'm quite keen on watching over what's going on in Ukraine when it comes down to gathering, collecting, documenting witness accounts, witness testimonies of the war. And your work in particular presents itself as emerging at the intersections of that very, very paradigmatic shifting phenomena which we're observing in Ukraine, and literally creativity, of which of course you're part of. So welcome to our readings, and thank you for being with us today. I will introduce our speakers all at once. So I'll read a little bit the biographies. Then each of you, Kateryna and Andriy, will have about 20 minutes to read, and I'll stick with the order which I was presented with. Andriy would be first, Kateryna would be second. And then we will have some time for a conversation, and I'm looking forward to all three parts of our gathering today. So Andriy Lyubka is a well-known and well-recognized internationally and nationally, of course, writer, poet, and now an activist, community activist. He graduated from Mukachevo Military School, Ukrainian philology at Uzhhorod University, and then eventually he studied Balkan Studies at the University of Warsaw. Andriy is author of many books, books of poetry, 8 Months of Schizophrenia, The Terrorism, $40 plus tips, collection of short stories, The Killer, collection of poems translated into German language, Not Aufnahme, book of essays, Sleeping with Women, and of course, very famous novel Karbet, which was shortlisted amongst top 5 books of the year by BBC Ukraine. A must read, of course, among so many other books written by Andriy. And the Polish translation of that book was also shortlisted by the Central European for the Central European Award Angelus in 2017. Many countries, many nations have translated Andriy's books into the variety of languages. Slovenian translation of that book was published in Ljubljana. English translation was published in London, and so on and so forth. Lots of other outcomes and wonderful writings have come from under your pen, Andriy. Collection of short stories, The Room for Sadness, book of essays, Saudade, the one I'm still working on, and novel Your Gaze, San, travel essays about the Balkan in search of the barbarians, novel The Small Ukrainian Novel, the books of essays, Something is Wrong with Me, and list, I'm sure not the fullest. Andriy is a winner of the prizes Debut in 2007, Kiev Laurels 2011, and recently he's received literally award of Kovalev Foundation in the United States and became a laureate of Shevelyov's Prize for the best book of essays in 2017 in Ukraine. Importantly, Andriy is a member of Ukrainian PEN. He's also very active at translating himself. He's translated works from Polish, Croatian, Serbian, and English, and he's been curating also international poetry festivals, which are also phenomenally important events in Ukraine. And with the now full-scale invasion of Russia of Ukraine, Andriy has stepped in the role of active volunteer. He's driving cars to the military units at the battlefield and meets many people who live under shelling every day, as well as soldiers who were civilians before February 24th, 2022. Andriy is joining DUSS team also with the project. And Andriy says in his note here that he would like to tell about the lives of these people, their views and their lifestyles. I'm assuming in a literally fashion. And I actually will let you speak about your project rather than me reading the notes about that. Let me introduce Kateryna very briefly. Again, I'm extremely pleased to host you, Kateryna, today. And we know you, of course, as a Ukrainian famous writer as well, a member of PEN Ukraine, and a member of National Unit of Writers of Ukraine, Ukrainian Art Therapy Associate, which is a unique touch to your career as a writer, which of course informs a lot of your work. Kateryna is also a TED speaker. She holds a master's degree and postgraduate degree in literature from National Kyiv Mohyla Academy. And Kateryna is now the author of 20 plus books and have published in 10 countries. We again are very blessed to have such renowned writers with us today who are translated and whose work is well received internationally. She's collaborated with UNICEF as a screenwriter, as well as with Ukrainian Institute of National Memory as the author of a book about the Holodomor, genocide of Ukrainians by Stalin's rule in 1932-33, very important book. And her books won several awards and have been shortlisted for top 5 books of the year by BBC in 2022. There's also an important project that Kateryna is currently working on. I have a title in front of me saying it's Thread of Memory. I'm working on the book of reports about witnesses of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And again, perhaps you will say a few words about your project before you will read. So I'm very thrilled to have you both in our session today. May we start with Andriy kindly and give you your 20 minutes to share with us your thoughts, your wisdom, your work, and your words.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Дякую. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, I have to say that I'm now in Kyiv, near the Kyiv railway station. So in case of air alert, I will be I have to move from this place, so I beg your pardon if something, because it is key infrastructure point in Kyiv and it is real danger. But I hope that I will have this at least 20 minutes to present myself and my work. I'm from the western part of Ukraine. If we can compare it to Canada, probably it is British Columbia, both geographically and
We're losing Andriy a little bit, and I'm hoping you're with us. Let's the connection restore. We have a lovely picture of Andriy still up, but the sounds of your voice, Andriy, is breaking away.
point. Me?
Andriy, we had poor connections with you so far. I'm not sure you're hearing us. Are you seeing us?
Andriy, one of the suggestions, because you use like a blurry screen behind, so just turn off it. Sometimes it's so much traffic that it's better to do not have that feature at this moment. Yeah.
I'm not sure how to do it.
Nico, maybe you know how to. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I'm from the western part of the country, from Uzhgorod, and I can say that I'm a professional writer because I live for my writings, and I do it since 2014. I wrote 10 books so far. I work with poetry. I started with poetry, with collections of poetry, and then I switched and focused on writing of essays, short stories, and novels. But when the full-scale aggression started, I once more switched, and nowadays I am in very strange position, in very hybrid position, because I have this role of writer in society, but first of all, I'm a volunteer who are helping Ukrainian army. But why I call this role hybrid? Because I'm a literary volunteer. So my work started in 2022 when I realized that one of my friends who enlisted to the army called me from the Donbas region and told me that the unit really need some kind of a jeep, of a vehicle which can move in forest or in the field. And I started to fundraise, to collect money, and I wrote a post on Facebook, because Facebook is my main social network. And I wrote actually to my friends that our common friend, who was totally a civil person before the war and maybe even a pacifist, he is now in the army, and the unit really needs some kind of SUV vehicle. And I also wrote a number of my bank account in this post on Facebook, and some kind of a mess started immediately, because my phone started to vibrate every second, and I had to turn it off. And when I woke up next morning, I found the double amount of money on my bank account. So I had opportunity to buy 2 vehicles for Ukrainian army, and actually it was a start of this journey, new role in my life. And since that time, I collected more than 1 million euros and bought 240 cars for Ukrainian army. I gathered a team of volunteers who are helping me with repairing these cars, who are helping me with transporting these cars from. Actually, we usually buy it in the UK, in England, who transport it to the Ukrainian borders, and we repair it on our base in Uzhgorod, and then we are driving these cars to the front line. So we made already 38 trips to the front line in Donbas, Kharkiv region, in Kherson, and other regions in the eastern and southern Ukraine. It is my main occupation now. So I dedicate, I think that maybe 80% of my time to this work. And I have only few minutes per day, few hours per week for my creative activity. And therefore, I am very grateful to the CIUS for this program, which support us. And my writing now is not a fiction. Before I wrote a lot of fiction, and I was eager to travel in these imaginary worlds and so on. But now I am focused on documentary writing, on non-fiction, and now I am writing something. I think that I can call this genre essays, type of a diary about the trips to Donbass, to the front line, and about my meetings with Ukrainian soldiers. I wrote a lot about the phenomena of Ukrainian civil society, because I think that the strength of this civil movement in Ukraine surprised not only our Western allies, but also our Ukrainian society. And one of our aims and goals now, when we are facing the third year already of the full-scale invasion, our goal is to save this strength and save this unity within the society. And as a civil kind of activist or volunteer, it is also my role. And my writing and my work is actually I dedicated to this goal. Now I would like to read you a small excerpt of the text I wrote about these trips to Donbass, and it is part of my new book, which will be called Війна з тильного боку. Maybe in English we can say that it is War from the rear or War from the back. In Ukrainian, I play with this, with the definition of the word "тил", because it is also from the back, but it is also about some more peaceful regions in Ukraine, and as a metaphor, it is also about our possibility to find this solid ground on which our state and society can stay. So, Війна з тильного боку, this book will be published in, I think, in 1 month, and it is the text I wrote to it. It is called Roasted Uganda, and I will start it with Ukrainian original and then read this excerpt in English. Roasted Uganda. З усіх речей, які я возив українським військовим на фронт, найважливішою була пачка кави. Кілограмовий пакунок свіжообсмаженої кави з однієї гіпстерської кав'ярні Ростерії в центрі Ужгорода, прямокутний і блискучий, зі стильною наліпкою Roasted Uganda. Річ радше для інстаграму, ніж для фронту. Втім, вона виконувала цілком оборонну функцію. Щоправда, допомагала захистити не тіло, а те, що важливіше за тіло – людське в людині. Раніше, коли я писав вірші, я б назвав цю дивну субстанцію душею. А тепер хай буде психіка. Та кава допомагала захистити психіку, бо створювала відчуття, що ти не просто шматок м'яса, ціль для снайперів і бомб, а людина. Людина з її смаками, вподобаннями і звичками. Я добре пригадую той ранок. Початок травня, коли ночі ще холодні, але вранці повітря швидко набирає тепла і запахів. Село десь за Слов'янськом на Донбасі. Село, де військових тепер у рази більше за місцевих мешканців. Мешканці переважно виїхали, бо майже щодня околиці обстрілюють, і вночі неможливо заснути через звуки вибухів. Уночі, до речі, їх чути швидше, краще. Вони набувають об'ємності і лунають у темній тиші зловіще, як чуже серцебиття. Того разу наша волонтерська команда приїхала в пункт дислокації військового підрозділу занадто пізно. Нас довго перевіряли на блокпостах, дорога була важкою, а через відсутність зв'язку ми трохи блудили незнайомими дорогами, тож прибули на місце в момент, коли ще не темно, але вже хочеться увімкнути світло. Це означало, що тієї ночі ми будемо змушені заночувати з військовими на лінії фронту. And now I will read it in English. Can you hear me? Everything is okay? Super, thank you. Roasted Uganda. Of all the things I took to the front for Ukrainian soldiers, the most important was a kilogram of freshly roasted coffee from a hipster coffee house in the center of Uzhhorod. The package was rectangular and shiny, emblazoned with a stylish roasted Uganda sticker. It's something more suited for a post on Instagram than to the front. However, its primary function was defensive in nature. That coffee helped to protect not only the body, but something even more important. It protected what made our soldiers human. Earlier, when I still wrote poems, I would call this strange substance the soul, but now let it be the psycho. That coffee helped to protect soldiers' psychos because it made them feel that they were not just a piece of meat, a target for snipers and bombs, but people. They were still people with their own refined tastes, preferences, and habits. I recall that morning very well. It was the start of May, when the nights were still chilly, but by dawn the air was filled with warmth and fragrances. We were in a village somewhere outside of Slovyansk in Donbass, a village where there were 3 times more military than the remaining residents. The latter had mostly left as the outskirts of the village were being shelled almost daily, making it impossible to sleep at night due to the sound of explosions. At night, you could hear them even more clearly. They gained volume and sounded ominously in the dark silence, like someone else's heartbeat. That time, our volunteer team arrived at the location of the military unit too late. The checkpoint inspections took longer than expected, and the road was difficult. We got lost for a while on unfamiliar roads due to lack of mobile connection, so we arrived at the location around evening, although it was not yet fully dark outside. This meant that we would be forced to spend the night with the military at the front line, as it was impossible to leave those places at night due to the light masking regime. Online maps didn't work, the terrain was unfamiliar to us, and it was forbidden to turn on headlights. We could have accidentally driven into Russian position in such a case, so we stayed overnight. As we woke to the sounds of nearby and distant explosions interrupting our short and restless sleep, we knew it was time to quickly set off for our next destination. But my friend, who after 24th of February had donned a military uniform and now served in this unit, stopped us with a simple request. Wait, he said, I will make a coffee. Without electricity, he started the diesel generator, connected a small coffee maker to it, and filled it with the water. He then took out a packet of coffee from the box I had brought him the day before. The label read, Roasted Uganda. He poured it into the coffee maker, and within a minute, the May morning air was filled with the aroma of pure Arabica. I think that's how the Bible came to be written. People must have been just as surprised when Jesus began handing out fish and bread among them. It was a small miracle to receive a metal mug of perfectly brewed espresso in the worst part of the world at that time, somewhere near Slovyansky Donbass, in the nights of war. It may have been the most delicious coffee of my life. It sounds cliché, but it's the truth. With a knowing grin, my friend made a theatrical pause before responding to the unspoken question in our minds. What? I might die today. Why does it have to be the day where I haven't had my morning coffee? Fuck them. I have no intention of giving up my usual routine. No Putin will take that away from me. I start my day with a delicious espresso, and I will be damned if I don't get to enjoy it just because of the war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andriy.
I will. Thank you for your patience. I will also send the link for this text in English to our chat, so you can continue reading. It is short text, only for 3 pages, but you will know the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us in the moment of your life, in the moment of so many other people's lives, enhanced by the smells of coffee on the front line. my mind is racing, but I want to remind the guests that and the attendees that you can send your questions via the chat, or rather, sorry, not via the chat, but the Q&A option here. And while you're thinking of your questions, I will ask Kateryna to take over. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening. Hello, thank you very much for invitation. And also, I'm sorry for my mistakes because I'm not very experienced in spoken English, but I will try to do my best. And I prepared presentation and I will ask your colleague to share my presentation. Yeah. So my project calls A Thread of Memory. It's collection of voices of witnesses of Russian aggression against Ukraine, which I collected during 2022-2023. And this picture, this photo I took from the north of the Kyiv region. I pulled out a piece of shell from the book, which is called History and Geography of Ukraine, from the chapter The Origin of the Name Ukraine. So it's a very bright sign for me. Now, one second, please. About my book, I have agreements with Ukrainian publisher and also with Polish publisher, and I recorded 20 interviews and many short testimonies. These are interviews with civilians, soldiers, and volunteers from different regions of Ukraine: Kharkiv, Kyiv, Chernihiv, Kherson, Donetsk, Lugansk, and even from Crimea. Among my witnesses, a civilian man who was lucky enough to be released from Russian captivity, a translator of Stephen King's books who tried to preserve her mental health working under the sounds of explosions in occupied Bucha, a widow of a soldier who received the news of her husband's death on her birthday, and is trying to preserve his memory. Also a psychotherapist who has been working with prisoners of war and torture victims for several years. Then with a family from Gostomel who fled the occupation on foot with their small children while under artillery fire. A teacher from Bucha who once moved from Lugansk region and had to go through the occupation again, and many others. I paid attention also to the role of culture in strengthening of resilience. Which experience helped me to work with this topic, with this traumatic experience. Previously, I worked with refugees and also with war orphans as art therapists. We wrote fairy tales. We made different things to cope with stress and to cope with trauma. Please, next one. Please, next one. Yeah, next. It's my work as art therapist with war orphans in Carpathian Mountains during previous summer. Please, next one. Next slide. Yes, and it's this is my book about Holodomor, and I had experience previous year when I presented this book also in Denmark. Please, next slide. In a Ukrainian house with Natalia Popovich, and also we had meetings not only with Ukrainian children and teachers and parents, but also with Danish politicians. Please, next one. Yes, and this is about my book for children, The Holiday Had to Take, about first 2 weeks of full-scale invasion. This book is, I wrote it in form of a diary of a girl, and it also based on the experience of my family and families of my friends. And one second, please. And I also had many meetings with children and adults. This photo I took in Mykolaiv. I had presentation of my book there. And also I understand that it's very important for children here in Ukraine, in the occupied territories, and also abroad, because they feel themselves lonely, and I try to help them to feel that we understand yeah, the experience here. And also next one, it's about the process of collecting evidence, collecting testimonies. This picture I took in December of previous year in Mykolaiv, and how I conduct interviews with witnesses. I prepare for each interview. That includes questions and emotional preparation. My tasks are to establish a sincere, trusting contact, to reveal the person as much as possible, to make their stories visible, and at the same time to support them, because we are dealing with traumatic experiences. Some of my questions direct witnesses to seek support, integrate past experiences into the future, and understand the sources of personal resilience. In their feedback, witnesses mentioned that these conversations became a kind of a therapy for them. Based on these recordings, I write literary reportages in the first person. I completely remove my voice. Also, sometimes it is important to give more space to the witnesses. In interviews, people usually jump from topic to topic, and sometimes the recordings seem very chaotic, but I build a coherent narrative out of them. It is also important for me to preserve the audio portraits of the witnesses, special words, sentences, constructions, and even intonations. And now I want to show you people, only some of them to whom I talked with. Please, next slide. This is Victor Moskal. He is a farmer from the Kharkiv region who survived from Russian captivity. We conducted the interview in the center of Kharkiv. Now he wears bright clothes, has changed his profession, and is trying to treat his teeth, which were damaged because of the strong current that was passed through him. And the second photo is also from Kharkiv. I took it. Please, next slide. This is Nastya. Nastya from Mariupol recorded the interview in Lithuania with her parents' permission. She was 13 years old at the time of the invasion. On 24th of February, under shelling, she started keeping a diary in Ukrainian. Also, she was Russian-speaking. A notebook with the inscription, "Let's Dream," was given to her by a friend some days before. In this notebook, day after day, she describes how her home and her world are being destroyed. And this picture, which is left, it's a photo of her house, of Nastya's house. And please, next slide. Yeah. This is family from Nova Kakhovka who have been living the occupation for over a year. Dmytro is Ukrainian, born in Norilsk, so he has a Russian passport. During the occupation, he was offered to become a collaborator. The couple gave birth to their second child during the occupation. Marina was the only woman in labor in the maternity house. The occupiers placed their fine point near it from where they fired. I recorded an interview with them in Poland. A literary report about this family has recently been published in the Goethe Institute. Next slide, please. This screenshot from this publication. It was in Ukrainian, in German, and also in Czech language. And now I will read a very short episodes, very short testimonies. I gave birth under occupation to the sound of explosions. It happened 5 minutes before 10 o'clock. The doctor even joked that I managed to deliver before the curfew. I was the only woman in labor in the maternity ward. At about 12 p.m., the occupiers started firing rockets from the place right next to us. They were often based near kindergartens, schools, hospitals, so that they would not be hit in return. I held the baby close to me. I had to sign the documents, and my hands were shaking. The doctor said, "At least put a cross on it." So I did. And in Ukrainian. Народжувала я в окупації під звуки вибухів. Це сталося за 5 хвилин до 10-ї. Лікар ще пожартував, що встигла до комендантської години. У пологовому я була єдиною породіллею. Десь о 12-й ночі окупанти почали випускати ракети прямо біля нас. Вони часто базувалися біля садочків, шкіл, лікарень, щоб по них у відповідь не прилетіло. Я пригортаю немовля до себе. Треба підписати документи, а в мене руки тремтять. Лікар каже, ви хоч хрестик поставте. То я й поставила. Next short episode from Tetiana Fedorova, Irpin. I grew up with my heart, body, hands, and feet into my father's house. My father loved this garden so much that his soul lives here to this day. How could I leave him? I made my first ornaments under the old apple tree when I was a little girl. All the collections of embroidered towels, icons, and ragdolls are here. My house is all alive as a person. During the occupation, we had no electricity or communication. When night fell, I used to climb into the attic to call to my son. He is a psychologist, so he said, "Breathe, Mom, breathe deeply." When there was shelling, I was lying under the 1939 wall that survived after the Second World War and breathing deeply. When it was very scary, I asked myself, "Do you regret staying here?" No. And this was an honest answer. I knew I wanted to be a witness. Тетяна Федорова, Ірпінь. Я вросла серцем, тілом, руками, ногами у хату батьківську. Мій батько так любив цей сад, що його душа тут і понині живе. Ну як його покину? Під старою яблунею я малою робила свої перші витинанки. Тут усі мої колекції рушників, ікон, ляльок, мотанок. Моя хата жива, як людина. В окупації у нас не було ні світла, ні зв'язку. Коли опускалася ніч, я лізла на горище, щоб якось додзвонитися синові. Він у мене психолог, тож казав, дихай, мамо, глибоко дихай. Коли були обстріли, я лежала під стіною 1939 року, що пережила Другу світову, і глибоко дихала. Коли було дуже страшно, я питала себе, не шкодуєш, що лишилася? Ні. І це чесна відповідь. Я розуміла, що хочу бути свідком. And the last one from Sergei Grigoryan. He is my friend and military doctor from Chernihiv. I was traveling from Dnipro to Kyiv. I was sitting with a military man who looked about 24, 27 years old. His name was Igor. He said he was on holiday from Bakhmut. We started talking. My mother probably won't recognize me, he said. I turned gray in 5 minutes. There was heavy shelling, and my wounded comrade fell on top of me. I was lying in the dark, breathing heavily, and saw the body armor. I could feel his heart beating, and then it slowly stopped. Серце. Сергій Григорян, Чернігів. Їхав я з Дніпра у Київ. Зі мною сидів військовий на вигляд 24-27 років. Ігор, каже, із Бахмута у відпустку. Розговорилися. Напевно, мене мати не впізнає, каже. Рідна мати завжди впізнає свого сина. Я посивів за 5 хвилин. Був сильний обстріл, і мій поранений товариш упав на мене. Лежу в темряві, тяжко дихати, і крізь бронік відчуваю, як б'ється його серце, а потім потроху зупиняється. So on the very short testimonies, and I have also long reportages, and now please the last slide. Yeah. I took this photo in the fall of 2022 on the banks of the Irpin River when the Ukrainian military blew up the dam to stop the occupiers' advance on Kyiv. A lot of land was flooded. To adapt, willows grew roots at a new level. And when the water level dropped, they returned to their roots. Similarly, I hope that despite all the trials of war and tribulations of refugee life, Ukrainians will be able to return to their roots. So thank you for attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kateryna. Thank you, Andriy. I guess I'm reminding our guests that you can send your questions via the Q&A option here on the screen, and we're looking forward to receiving those. But I'm under the spell of your presentations right now, and it's indeed causes me to think so many thoughts. And in particular, I wanted to come back maybe for a couple of observations and ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Well, maybe other people are gathering with their own thoughts as well. First, we of course understand that such a profound breakdown of normalcy as the war brings into the lives of many peoples demands witnessing, demands telling. And in particular, what strikes me as very important here is demands storytelling. And this is where you as writers come in to carry on that absolute necessary task to share and pass on what you witness. So thank you for doing this work. I am an oral historian by training. I teach the value of storytelling to my students. I also gather testimonies of that very dirty war here in Canada in particular. And I can relate to some of your experiences when it comes down to interviewing and sitting down and facing someone who has gone through major trauma. I'm curious how your efforts and your work is seen and perceived by those who you are, whose stories and whose experiences you are sharing with the broader world. Can you maybe reflect on that a little bit? Andriy, your experiences working on the front lines with soldiers and others, they know you're bringing their stories outside of the front. Like, how do they see you? What's the value to them there? And Kateryna, the same for you, but slightly different context.
I think that that in Ukraine, still even before the war, the role of the writer was really important because in our society, maybe due to the fact that we didn't have a state or independent state in previous centuries, role of the intellectual, role of the writer, and maybe even more role of the poet from the romantic tradition, from the modern times when we build our nation, is really important, and we saw it during our revolutions. And now, role of the writer is once more crucial for the society because we have very important type of the I don't know capital, from our society. It is they trust us. And in the years when Soviet Union collapsed, at that time, writers' newspapers, Literary Ukraine, Literaturna Ukraina, was really the most popular one with highest, biggest print runs. And now what we are facing actually in Ukrainian society, what is shocking and surprising our foreign friends, that during these hard times, during these terrific times, our culture is facing some kind of a renaissance. So, for example, I can deliver my own example. Because when we imagine war, we think about the battlefields, about the rockets, missiles, and so on and so on, about the blood and death, of course. But in these hard times, people need something else, and something from the intellectual or cultural, or I don't know how to say it, maybe even spiritual life. And for example, previous year was the most successful year for Ukrainian book publishing market in all of the 30 years of our independence. And today I visit Ivan Malkovich in Kyiv, as the director of Baba Halamaha, famous publishing house, which really starts at the very first days of our independence. And he told me that 2023 was the most successful year in terms of business, in terms of the commercial success for him in all of these 33 years of Ukrainian independence. And it is, first of all, because the people, Ukrainian society, started to pay more attention for Ukrainian culture. And when you buy a book, it is some kind of a gesture of a symbol that you support Ukrainian culture. But a lot of people within Ukraine shifted from the Russian speaking to Ukrainian language. And for them, book is some kind of a training to enrich your vocabulary, for example. And I can approve this fact because I have 7 books of mine now on the market, and previous year was really the most successful in terms of the sales. And I think that on the one hand it is surprising, but on the other hand it is natural, it is obvious, because culture plays a crucial role now. And when I am going to the battlefield, when I speak with soldiers, or when I speak, and it is the hardest part of my work, when I speak with families, mothers and wives, young wives who became widows of the killed Ukrainian soldiers, they actually speak with me as with someone who can help them to preserve memory about the heroic life, about the biographies of their beloved. And it is really, really hard thing for me. Actually, I wrote in frame of this DUSS project, I wrote a piece about the, one guy from my hometown. He was a painter, and as a volunteer, he went to the army at the very first days of the full-scale invasion. and he went through Bakhmut last winter, and it was a hell on the earth, but he had some damages and so on, but after all he returned to the army, and we spoke with him in summer when he was at the hospital. And in previous life, he was some kind of this bohemian type of a person. He was very creative, very loud, and he actually didn't want. He was some kind of hippie, maybe a young guy, not hippie from the 60s, but his way of life was he really pay a lot of attention to his freedom, and he told that he will do something, but this work is only for to finance his creative life and his paintings and so on and so on. And he was killed in August, and I wrote a piece about him, and I published it on my page because he wasn't famous. He actually was too young to become famous, but I think that his biography and his story, his case, can tell us a lot about Ukrainian soldiers, because in the Western countries, usually people think that we have Ukrainian army and it is very strong and very well trained and so on. But now Ukrainian army consists of 70% of Ukrainian soldiers were totally civilian, without no military experience before the full-scale invasion. It is actually an army of civilians. And I wrote this piece about him, and I went to his farewell, let's call it like this, because everything was closed due to the damages to his body and so on. And I met his young, very young, really a student widow with a small daughter, and I met his mother, and it was very touching in a way, because they told me that for them, the fact that so-called real writer wrote something about their son and husband, it means a lot, because it gives them hope that memory of him will not die. Of course, it is too naive, but when people are crying, and in these very hard moments, in these very hard years, we already have to say, I think that these are very important. So I found my job. Actually, that is why I step out of this fiction writing and focus now on non-fiction of diaries and essays, of documenting the real life, because now real life is much more interesting, much more deep than fiction can be. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So Kateryna, coming back to you, very much with the same questions, somewhat different context. What is your experience with that very, perception of your work, or not your experience with perception of your work, but how do you see being seen by those who you're working with? Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question, and maybe I will need an interpreter just to be not so slowly.
We have no issue whatsoever with your beautiful English, by the way, so you can dare to try, but I think Anna was available there to do some translation. Thank you. We have professionals in the room.
Я дуже погоджуюсь з Андрієм, тому що дуже важливо, щоб ці страждання і ці подвиги наших людей були видимими.
I agree with Andriy, because I think that the suffering of our people and the brave acts of our people have to be visible.
І зазвичай це дуже прості люди, які навряд чи будуть про себе писати навіть у Фейсбуці. Багато хто з них навіть не має соцмереж, як, наприклад, цей фермер з Харківщини.
As a rule, there are regular people who are not very eager to write about themselves. Quite often, they don't even have access to social media, like this farmer from the Kharkiv region.
Я добре знаю, як впливає травма на людей, тому що я сама є нащадком тих, хто вижив після Голодомору, і моя бабуся дуже багато років про це мовчала.
And I know how trauma affects people because I'm a descendant of a family who suffered from Holodomor, and I know that my grandmother was keeping silent about this experience for years.
І я знаю, що з часом, можливо, буде все складніше і складніше розговорити цих людей, і їхні свідчення будуть уже змінюватись, будуть нашаровуватись якісь інші досвіди, тому дуже важливо говорити з ними зараз, поки вони готові.
And I know that with time it might be easier to get these people to talk. And of course, with time, their memories of these events and of the experiences might be changing, and new experiences will be layered on. So it's important to get their testimonies down now.
Окрім того, що війна і об'єднує суспільство, вона його і роз'єднує, оскільки ми маємо дуже різні досвіди, дуже різні втрати, і тому такі тексти так само допомагають збільшити емпатію.
And it's important to remember that the war is uniting our society, but it's also splitting it up in many respects. And it's important to know that these texts and this literary work is very helpful in creating and strengthening empathy.
І ці різні досвіди нас роблять самотніми, і окрім того, ще накладається втома від війни, і часто люди закриваються в собі. Тому і зустрічі зі свідками, і такі розмови, взаємопідтримка, і в тому числі і створення книжок, публікацій допомагає нам краще розуміти одне одного і ставати ближчими.
Of course, our individual experiences often make us feel lonely, and we are going through all of these alone. So it's important to meet with the people and with writers. It's important to write books, publish them, because it helps us eventually to understand each other.
І хотіла б ще наостанок сказати про роль поезії. Окрім того, що я збираю свідчення, я ще пишу вірші.
And finally, I wanted to mention that I'm also writing poetry apart from collecting testimonies.
І мені інколи приходили такі відгуки на вірші, що після вашого вірша там я вперше розплакався чи розплакалась після початку вторгнення, тому що люди не дозволяють собі випускати ці емоції, вони чекають, коли це все закінчиться, і можливо тоді, але так неможливо довго витримувати.
And quite often I was getting feedback from people reading my poetry. They were saying that after reading those poems, they were able to cry and kind of vent their feelings for the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion. Because sometimes people don't let themselves be open and feel the things that they feel. So the role of poetry is quite important in processing that kind of trauma as well.
Ну і література і культура допомагають людям в ці важкі часи проживати їхні емоції, дуже сильні емоції, почуття в такий екологічний спосіб.
Our literature and our culture are helping us process these emotions in a very ecological way at these hard times.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Alexander here has raised his hand. I think it means a question is coming. Alexander. Might need to unmute yourself or...
Sorry. Thank you, Natalia. Andriy, Kateryna, thank you for very powerful presentations. I have been following your work for many years. With Andriy, I think I started following your work around 2010. Yes, and then you have been on my radar also. But I have a question, because the full-scale invasion has had effect and dramatically impacted many lives of Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad, and many people put on hold their plans. So I think it is the case also with the writers, because they stopped writing what they wanted. And maybe you have some projects that you put on hold. And are you planning to return to them in the future when the peace returns to Ukraine?
Can I start?
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, I have a long-term plan to write a historical novel about Mihail Tchaikovsky, or Sadık Pasha in Turkish, and it was my plan since maybe 2012 when I started my Balkan studies, because Mihail Tchaikovsky is a person who combines and mix these different experiences of Central and Eastern Europe with Balkan and Ottoman heritage, and very important for the history of different nations in our part of the world. And first of all, he was a spy, and he was James Bond of his century. And I am, like Alexander told, that I am on his radar. Mihail Tchaikovsky is on my radars, and I went to different countries, from Lebanon to Turkey, to different different parts of Ukraine, which are connected with this person. And I collected a lot of material. And in 2022, I had a plan to start writing. So I had everything, a base, a material, and I was planning to start the writing process. And I was expecting also that I will use the opportunity to be a fellow, a guest at the CIUS. And I recall my last visit when I had a chance to work in Lysak Rudnetsky room. And Lysak Rudnetsky was one of the Ukrainian historians who pay a lot of attention to this person, and wrote wonderful essay about Mihail Tchaikovsky, Sadık Pasha. So I thought that in this silent heaven of CIUS in Alberta, I will be writing this novel, and now it is on pause. But of course, we cannot return to this previous life. But these dreams, I think that every Ukrainian now has a dream: what I will do next day after the war stops, what I will do after our victory. And I already have a lot of different ideas about it, but a big dream and a big idea for me is to return to writing, to working in the cabinet, in my room, in silence, and I believe it will be soon.
Kateryna.
Thank you. So I will need translator. Ну, насправді так, в мене були плани, і я хотіла завершити книжку дитячу про горішкові плавні. У нас в Україні є таке місто Горішні плавні, а я створила світ горішкових плавнів, і це ціла серія книжок для дітей.
I did have some plans. I was planning to finish a children's book about Gorishny Plavny, which is a city in Ukraine, and it was supposed to be like a world for children.
І 23 лютого я мала закінчити цю книжку, але в зв'язку з війною я написала іншу книжку про, власне, цей щоденник дівчинки про початок повномасштабного вторгнення, тому що саме так я відчувала, і я цю книжку написала за 2 тижні на початку березня.
I was supposed to finish that book on the 23rd of February, actually, but because of the war, I ended up writing a different book based on that diary of a 13-year-old girl who I met, and I wrote that book within 2 weeks, sometime in March.
І потім я вже цю книжку дописала, але лише в Польщі під час резиденції, оскільки в Україні в мене був зовсім інший стан, я могла збирати тільки свідчення, і я не могла переключитись на такий добрий і спокійний казковий світ.
I did finish that first book, but later when I was in Poland, because while in Ukraine, I was only able to collect testimonies, and I wasn't able to immerse myself in that magic children's world.
І зараз в мене такий певний виклик, тому що мої книжки для дітей дуже добре продаються, і видавці хочуть, щоб я далі їх писала, але поки я збираю свідчення, мені неможливо переключатися з одного світу на інший.
And it's kind of a challenge for me at the moment because my children's books are actually selling very, very well. So publishers want me to keep writing them. But while this is still ongoing, I can only collect testimonies. And it's hard for me to switch between these two very different worlds.
Так, але я все одно намагаюсь будувати якісь плани, і я маю двоє дітей, 4 роки і 10 років, і, знаєте, материнство, воно вчить такому гнучкому плануванню, і я думаю, я цей лайфхак застосую зараз, можливо, мені вдасться планувати з надією.
But I'm still continuing to make plans. I'm actually a mother. I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old, and motherhood teaches you how to be flexible. So I'm trying to keep up and still make those plans with my children in mind.
Thank you.
And I just want to let our audience know that our main host, Dr. Natalia Khanenko-Friesen, had to start hosting a new dialogue, also with connections in Ukraine. So just checking in our Q&A, does anyone have any questions for the audience? Personally, I was thinking about the traumas, but also the way that you both found clear and powerful stories, finding your way through to births, finding your way to find coffee. I love the metaphor of the willow tree growing roots in a new spot. And just like, you know, societies have to adjust and grow new ways of creating safe spaces. So now, Alexander, I know you've been writing on this and you've asked your question. It is 7 minutes past the hour. I wonder if we should just invite any other questions to come to our email addresses, and then we'll forward them. This is our second discussion now in the DUSS Virtual Series. And that we will make an edited version of this available with links to the stories that these amazing authors have written.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we can't do this very easily, but a virtual round of applause to Andriy and Kateryna. And then we'll continue the conversation in any ways we can.
Thank you.